Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're tackling a real heavyweight today, Herman Melville's Moby Dick.
That's right. And specifically, we're focusing on those crucial first 22 chapters. Think of it as charting the course before the main voyage really begins.
Exactly. The preparation, the setup. Our mission here is to sort of unpack Ishmael's first steps, get a feel for the world he's diving into.
Yeah, because books like this, they're huge, right? Immense. We want to help navigate that, pull out the key insights from these opening sections. You might be surprised what details jump out.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. Call me Ishmael. Such a famous line. Simple, but it makes you wonder, why that name? And why is he going to see in the first place?
Well, he tells us pretty directly, doesn't he? He mentions the spleen, this damp, drizzly November in my soul.
Right, so it's this deep unhappiness, this sort of existential funk.
Exactly. It's profound discontent pushing him. Not just boredom, but this feeling that he has to do something drastic or, well, he contrasts it with Cato's suicide.
Which is heavy stuff. He's saying, I could end it all or I could go whaling.
Yeah, it's his philosophical but also kind of practical alternative, taking to the ship instead of the sword, as he puts it.
And he connects his personal blues to this bigger idea, doesn't he? This universal pull towards the ocean.
He does. The crowds and the Manhattoes, everyone just drawn to the water's edge. It's like this magnetic force. Have you ever felt that sort of pull, just standing by the sea?
Oh, definitely. There's something about it. And Melville, through Ishmael, gives all these examples.
Artists needing water in their landscapes, the pull of Niagara, the poet choosing Rockaway Beach over a coat.
Right. Even healthy boys instinctively heading for the sea. It's like it's baked into us somehow.
And then he calls the ocean the unglaspable phantom of life. That's quite a phrase.
It is. He links it to Narcissus, too. What do you think that's about?
Well, maybe it represents something we can't fully grasp, like life, deeper meanings, always just out of reach, reflecting back at us. It adds this layer of seeking something, maybe something unattainable.
Interesting. And maybe something a little self-absorbed in that seeking, too, like Narcissus. And listeners, what about his choice to be just a common sailor? He specifically avoids honorable, respectable toils.
Yeah, that's key. He wants anonymity, maybe. Freedom from the usual grind, the pressures of society.
He even mentions this invisible police officer of the fates. Like it wasn't entirely his choice.
Sort of preordained, yeah. Like this whaling trip is just his small part, his brief interlude and solo happening alongside huge world events. But underneath it all,
It's the whale.
it's the overwhelming idea of the great whale himself and the call of wild and distant seas, that everlasting itch for things remote. That's a big part of it, too.
That resonates, that itch for the remote. Okay, so he gets to New Bedford, December, Saturday night, cold. And he's missed the boat to Nantucket.
Yeah, the packet. And he's determined to get on a Nantucket ship.
Why Nantucket specifically?
He talks about its history, its reputation, this fine, boisterous something about Nantucket whalers. Even though New Bedford was taking over commercially, Nantucket was the original, the purist's choice, maybe.
Gotcha. So he's stuck in New Bedford, needs a cheap place to stay,
Yeah.
near the water. Dark night, not much cash.
Right. And he checks out a couple of places, the Crossed Harpoons and the Swordfish Inn.
Great names.
Hmm.
Very whaling-centric.
Definitely. But they're too expensive for him, too cheerful even, not matching his mood or his wallet.
So he ends up wandering these dreary streets.
And finds this low, wide building with an open door. It looks inviting in a grim sort of way. He thinks the sign says The Trap, which is, well, ominous.
And hilarious because it's wrong. He stumbles in, it's smoky.
And then he has that weird, brief encounter with the congregation spilling out of the Negro church nearby, hearing the preacher talk about darkness.
Yeah, that adds to the strangeness, his feeling of being out of place.
Totally. And finally, he arrives at the Spouter Inn, Peter Coffin.
Coffin. Okay, Melville's not being subtle here, is he?
Yeah, not at all. Spouter and Coffin. It screams wailing and death. The place looks ramshackle, the wind's howling. Euroclydon, he calls it.
He even quotes someone about watching a storm from a good window versus a broken one, right? And compares himself to a house with broken windows.
Yeah, feeling exposed, vulnerable, just like the inn itself.
So what's it like inside this charming establishment?
Well, the entry's wide, low, paneled like an old ship, and there's this huge, confusing, smoke-darkened painting.
The painting. What does he make of it?
At first, nothing. But eventually, he decides it must be a ship, a Cape Horner, in a massive storm with a whale literally impaling itself on the masts.
Whoa, okay. Talk about foreshadowing. That's intense.
Yeah.
What do you think, listeners? Did you picture that scene?
It's a brutal image to have hanging in a whaler's inn. And opposite that, all these weapons.
Right, the clubs and spears, rusty harpoons.
Each one with a story, you feel. Like Nathan Swain's lance that killed 15 whales or the harpoon that went 40 feet inside a whale. These aren't just decorations. They're relics of violence.
Really brings the reality of the job right into the room. And the bar.
The bar is designed like a whale's head. Giant jawbone arching over it, the bartender inside like Jonah. And they serve drinks in these tricky glasses that look bigger than they are.
Deceptive tumblers. Everything about this place feels a bit off. Unsettling.
It's definitely a threshold, isn't it? Between the land world he's leaving and this strange, dangerous sea world he's entering. The Spouter Inn is like a weird preview.
And speaking of previews, then comes Queequeg. Or the idea of Queequeg first. Ishmael's not thrilled about sharing a bed with a harpooner.
No, especially given the landlord's descriptions. Dark complexion, eats rare steaks.
Yeah.
It's all very vague and a bit othering.
Then there's that noisy arrival of the sailors from Labrador.
The bears, yeah, heading straight for the bar. And that quick glimpse of Bulkington.
Right, the tall southerner who just appears and disappears.
Yeah.
What was that about? Seemed significant somehow.
Maybe just another hint of the transient nature of sailors' lives, always coming and going. But yeah, the focus shifts back to Ishmael's bed-sharing dilemma.
And the landlord isn't helping, spinning yarns about the harpooneers selling shrunken heads.
Seriously, peddling embalmed heads, that sends Ishmael into a bit of a spin.
I bet. But he needs a bed. It's cold. He doesn't have much choice.
So eventually he agrees. He goes up to the room. It's got this huge bed, sea chest, hammock, and that harpoon standing right there.
The tools of the trade right in the bedroom. Intimate and kind of threatening.
For sure. And he finds Queequeg's robe, the tattooed one he thinks is a doormat.
And tries it on. A little moment of awkward comedy before the main event.
Exactly. And then Queequeg enters.
And it's quite an entrance. The description is so vivid. The tattoos, the shrunken head he pulls out, the shaved scalp with the top knot, the tomahawk.
It's overwhelming. Melville really throws you and Ishmael into the deep end of cultural difference here. What's your first impression listening to that description?
It's startling. He seems completely alien, almost dangerous.
And then the ritual. With his little wooden idol Yojo, the shavings, the biscuit, the fire. Ishmael's watching this, getting more and more freaked out.
Understandably.
Yeah.
It reinforces all his preconceived ideas.
And then, bam! Queequeg wakes up, sees Ishmael in the dark, and waves the tomahawk pipe around.
Terrifying moment, thinking he's an intruder.
Absolutely. Then the landlord rushes in, casually explains, oh yeah, he's a cannibal.
As if that helps.
Right. But then Queequeg makes these polite gestures, showing he means no harm, and Ishmael has this incredible turnaround.
That line, better sleep with a sober cannibal than a drunken Christian. It's amazing. What do you think makes him switch so fast?
Maybe it's Queequeg's calm demeanor after the scare, or just Ishmael's own weariness with the civilized world. He chooses to trust his gut, look past the labels. It shows real open-mindedness, doesn't it?
It really does. A willingness to ditch his prejudices. And incredibly, they have a peaceful night.
Which sets up the next morning. Ishmael wakes up and Queequeg's arm is just thrown over him, totally relaxed.
Yeah, he compares it to being his wife. It's surprisingly intimate so quickly.
It is. And he notices the patchwork quilt, how Queequeg's tattooed arm blends right in. It's a cool visual.
Then he has that weird childhood flashback, being sent to bed, wanting a whipping instead. What's the link there?
Maybe it's about preferring action, even painful action, over passive confinement. Ties into his need to go whaling, perhaps. His discomfort with just being still.
Could be. And Queequeg's morning routine is also unique.
Minimal washing, shaving with his harpoon. It just reinforces how different his world is, but also how practical he is.
Then downstairs for breakfast with all the other whalemen.
Right, this brown and brawny company. But they're all really quiet and shy on land.
Which is such a contrast to their image as fierce whale hunters, isn't it? It makes them seem more human.
Definitely. And Queequeg just sits among them, totally dignified, despite being the obvious outsider. He has this quiet confidence.
He really does. So Ishmael takes a walk around New Bedford in daylight.
And he's struck by all the nondescripts from foreign parts, even actual cannibals just walking around. It's more diverse and wild than other ports he knows.
He sees that funny country guy dressed up in ridiculous sailor gear, too.
Yeah, highlighting the difference between the fantasy and the reality of whaling life. But New Bedford isn't just rough, it's got wealth.
The fancy houses, the gardens,
Yeah.
all harpooned and dragged up from the bottom of the sea. Great metaphor.
It really is. Wealth built entirely on whaling. Dowries of whales, spermaceti candles everywhere. The whole town revolves around it.
Even the local girls are described in relation to the sea and whaling. Then he finds the whaleman's chapel.
A place sailors visit before voyages. He goes on a bleak, sleety Sunday.
And inside, it's sobering. Those marble tablets on the walls.
Yeah, memorials to men lost at sea, listing their names, ships, how they died, crushed by whales, dragged down by lines, lost in storms. It's brutal.
A stark reminder of the risks. Ishmael wonders why only these deaths get memorials.
It underscores the unique dangers of whaling, how the community grapples with constant loss. Listeners, how does that make you feel about the choices these men made?
Yet Ishmael seems almost defiant after seeing all that. He talks about his shadow being his true substance. Like he's embracing the danger.
It's complex, isn't it? He sees the death, but it seems to solidify his resolve to go on this Nantucket voyage anyway. Maybe facing mortality head-on gives him purpose.
And then we meet Father Mapple.
A former harpooner himself, now the chaplain, storm-beaten but venerable.
And that entrance, climbing that rope ladder into the pulpit.
Yeah, the ladder shaped like a ship's rigging, and then he pulls it up after him.
Symbolizing.
What?
Cutting himself off from the world below. Spiritual focus.
Probably all of that. Setting himself apart to deliver the message. And behind him, that painting of the ship in the storm with the angel.
More peril and hope mixed together. His prayer is intense too, like he's praying from the seabed.
Very devout. Then he reads the hymn, full of terror and salvation, and then launches into the sermon.
About Jonah.
Classic tale. But Mapple really digs into it. Disobedience, flight, the storm, the whale, the repentance.
He makes it incredibly vivid. But what's the main takeaway Mapple emphasizes?
Two things, really. For everyone. Sin leads to suffering, but repentance brings deliverance. Be grateful for punishment, even. But then there's a deeper lesson.
For people like him, like prophets or maybe captains.
Exactly. For the pilot of the living God. The duty to speak hard truths, even when people don't want to hear them. Not to run away like Jonah did initially. Woe betide the messenger who shirks that duty.
That feels like it might be important later. Maybe for Captain Ahab?
Very possibly. Mapple stresses the delight in standing firm for truth, despite the cost. It's a powerful message for a congregation about to face immense challenges. What part of that sermon stuck with you, folks?
It's that call to integrity, I think. Okay, sermon's over, back to the end. Queequeg's with his idol again.
Yo, Joe. And he's counting pages in a book, making these weird whistling noises.
Yeah, like 50 pages is some kind of magic number. Still very alien. But Ishmael's perspective has shifted, hasn't it?
Completely. He's looking past the tattoos now, seeing an honest heart, a brave spirit. He even admires Queequeg's head shape, compares him to George Washington.
It's quite a leap. He sees this inherent dignity, this self-possession Queequeg has, even though he's a total stranger in this land.
Ishmael calls it fine philosophy, even if Queequeg wouldn't use the term. It's like innate wisdom. And their bond just grew stronger in that room.
Ishmael says he prefers this pagan friend to fake Christian niceties. They look in the book together. Queequeg's happy they'll share the bed again.
And Queequeg is just so generous, gives Ishmael the embalmed head.
Which Ishmael politely gets rid of later.
Yeah. But he also shares his money freely. It shows a real lack of materialism, maybe. Or just deep trust.
Then Ishmael actually joins in Queequeg's idol worship.
Which is huge. His justification doing unto others shows how far his tolerance is stretched. It's about mutual respect, crossing religious lines.
They have these intimate chats before sleeping, sharing the tomahawk pipe.
Creating that condensed, confidential comfortableness. It's in these moments that Queequeg shares his backstory.
And what a story. A prince from a South Sea island.
Yep. Who left his home and royal future specifically to experience the Christian world, learn from it, and bring that knowledge back to his people. He chose the life of a whaleman for enlightenment.
That turns everything on its head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's not just some savage. He's on his own kind of quest. What do our listeners think of Queequeg's mission?
It's incredibly noble. He sees whaling as a way to learn, deferring his coronation until he feels ready. The harpoon is his temporary scepter.
Amazing. And they end that night basically embracing. A true brotherhood formed.
So the next day, they settle the bill with Queequeg's money, get rid of the head.
And face the amused looks from everyone else at the inn about their closeness.
Then the famous wheelbarrow scene, Queequeg trying to carry it instead of wheeling it.
Classic fish out of water moment. But it leads to him telling stories about Rokovoko, his home, more glimpses into his world.
Then they finally get on the schooner, the Moss, to head to Nantucket, sailing past New Bedford Harbor.
Seeing all the ships, the barrels, the sheer scale of the whaling industry. Ishmael thinks about the endless cycle of it all.
And then that bumpkin falls overboard.
Right, and Queequeg just dives into the freezing water without a second thought and saves him.
Total hero moment. And his comment afterwards.
We cannibals must help these Christians. Just brilliant. Completely flips the script on who's civilized.
Absolutely. So they finally reach Nantucket. Ishmael describes it as really isolated, sandy, unique.
Almost like its own little world. He calls the whalemen their sea hermits.
Yeah, saying they've conquered the oceans like emperors. The sea is their real home, more than the land.
They arrive late, get sent to the Tripods Inn, famous for chowder.
Owned by Hosea Hussey. But the directions are confusing, and the inn sign, 2 black pots hanging like a gallows.
More cheerful imagery. What did you think when you read that, listeners? More foreshadowing.
It feels like it, doesn't it? Inside, Mrs. Hussey is yelling at someone. There's confusion over clam or cod chowder. It's all very fish-centric.
And she has a strict rule. No harpoons upstairs. Because of some past incident on a voyage.
Yeah. Another hint of danger and maybe superstition surrounding the tools of the trade. Then Queequeg consults Yojo, who tells them Ishmael should be the one to pick their whaling ship.
Ishmael's hesitant, but he goes along with it, which leads them to the Pequod.
Finally. And it looks old, weathered, maybe a bit gloomy, and it has that weird tent made of whalebone on the deck.
A whalebone wigwam. That's striking. What could that symbolize?
Living inside the thing you hunt. Constant reminder. It's provocative. Then they meet Captain Peleg.
One of the owners.
Oh.
And he's gruff.
That's putting it mildly. Very suspicious of Ishmael, the outsider. Practically accuses him of being a pirate or planning mutiny.
He's testing him, right? Seeing he's tough enough.
Seems like it. And then Peleg drops the first big piece of info about the captain, Ahab.
He's only got one leg. Lost it to a whale.
And Peleg doesn't spare the details. Describes the whale chomping it off. It's graphic and shocking. Immediately establishes Ahab as this mythic wounded figure.
Peleg insists Ishmael has to see Ahab before signing on, which just builds the mystery.
Then they haggle over Ishmael's pay, his lay. The other owner, Bildad, offers the 777th.
Which is basically nothing. Peleg gets mad. They settle on the 300th. It's almost comical, that negotiation.
Shows the business side, but also their personalities. Then Ishmael mentions Queequeg.
And Peleg's all for it once Queequeg proves his skill with the harpoon, right? Hitting that tiny tar spot.
Exactly. Impressive display. Queequeg's in. But just when it seems sorted.
The stranger shows up. Elijah.
Right. And he gives these creepy warnings about Ahab, laughs strangely, talks about his own arm not healing until Ahab does. What's that about?
It's so unsettling. He talks about fate, refuses to join the ship himself, casts this pall over the whole thing. Did Elijah give you the creeps, listeners?
He definitely adds a layer of serious dread. Then we get details about stocking the ship, and they need spares of everything because it's so dangerous.
Peleg's overseeing it all, very much in charge. But Ishmael keeps asking, where's Ahab?
And keeps getting vague answers. He's resting. He'll be aboard soon. It's weird signing on for years without meeting the captain.
Very weird. The unease is building. Then, the morning they're supposed to sail, Elijah's back.
Just appears, puts his hands on them. Going aboard, he asks.
So creepy. And he pushes them. Did they ask about Ahab's leg?
Yeah.
About the prophecy?
What prophecy? We don't know yet. Elijah just hints at dark stuff. His last words, don't be a fool and don't be too certain about knowing nothing. Chilling.
It really is. Implying there's a whole lot they don't know. Then it's time to go. Final preparations. Peleg talks to Starbuck, the chief mate.
Who seems competent, serious, everything's ready. Man the capstan.
Bildad acts as pilot to guide them out. And the ship sails.
On Christmas Day, cold, clear, freezing spray coating the ship.
Turning it into polished armor of ice with ice teeth on the rails. What an image to leave us with. Bleak, beautiful, dangerous. What did that final image make you feel?
So the Pequod is finally at sea. Ishmael went looking for an escape from his soul's damp November, and he's found, well, something intense.
Yeah, this incredible friendship with Queequeg, a dive into this strange whaling world, and just layers and layers of ominous signs about Captain Ahab and the voyage itself.
So think about this, listeners. Ishmael wanted to escape his inner darkness. What darkness might be driving Ahab, who's literally missing a piece of himself thanks to a whale? With all these warnings, what are your predictions? What's really going on here?
The ship sails on Christmas, but it feels less like a beginning and more like entering a dark mystery. We have this unseen captain, obsessed, wounded, these prophecies swirling around. What is the mission? What happens when they finally meet Ahab? What awaits them out there?
You'll have to join us next time to find out, as we continue this deep dive into Moby Dick. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss where this voyage takes us.